Welcome to the Tomes and Tropes podcast, where books and friendships collide. I'm Becca.
And I'm Keri, and we're two friends who love to talk about books. Today, we are talking about Divine Rivals. So, before we get started, we wanted to recognize that there is a boycott going on for the publisher of this book and its sequel. So, as a super quick recap, one of the publisher's employees posted some not good stuff, and some other stuff has happened along the way. But with that being said, we plan to stay pretty neutral about the situation on this podcast and just support the author and her amazing work. Please, please, please do your own research on this situation and boycott and make your own informed decisions about this book and any books published by them moving forward.
Yep. We also wanted to highlight that while this book is a young adult fantasy, there are some mature themes throughout. Here are some trigger warnings for Divine Rivals, and take a listen and just make sure you do your own research as well. There's addiction, alcoholism, death of a loved one, war, amputations, and hospitalizations. If you are affected by any of these or think you might be affected, these are pretty common themes throughout the book. If you have any questions about this, we recommend doing some research on your own before reading.
And with that, we have actually already read this book, which is different than normal, but we will do our very, very best to keep these book episodes spoiler free. So we will not be spoiling any parts of the books.
No spoilers here. We are so excited to start Divine Rivals and continue through Ruthless Vows as we finish Divine Rivals and go on to our next book. Today, we're going to do a quick intro into the series, also known as our book bait episode, to try to convince you to read this book along with us. First, like Keri said, this book is a little different than normal because we have both read this book. Previously, when we have covered books, neither of us have read them before. So in this case, both Keri and I have read Divine Rivals, but neither of us have read Ruthless Vows, which is the second book in this duology, which we will be covering next as well. We're still going to be diving into these books like we normally do. We're still going to have our one-sentence summaries. We're still going to have our meet cutes. We're still going to have our quotables and more as we go through and read this book. And we're also still going to be a spoiler-free podcast. So you may hear a lot of when I read this the first time or when I first read this book, but we're not going to be spoiling any future chapters.
So now into the book itself. So this is just Divine Rivals we're starting with. So this book is described, like Becca said, as a young adult historical fantasy, and it is authored by Rebecca Ross. So I'm just going to read from the back of the book, her little author intro bio person thing. I forgot what it was called. We love it. So it says Rebecca Ross was born and raised in Georgia, where she continues to reside with her husband, her lively Australian shepherd, which dog lover.
Love that.
I already love her, but that just made me love her more. And her endless piles of books. She loves coffee, the night sky, chalk art, maps, the mountains, and growing wildflowers in her yard. And a good story, of course.
Oh, of course.
And also, I did some digging on her website, and I found that she was actually a huge fan of Narnia when she was growing up, and she always wanted to go through the wardrobe. And I relate to that on a spiritual level. Because I always was like, let me go into every wardrobe and see if I can go to Narnia.
I love that.
So I want to be Rebecca Ross's friend. I want her to be my friend.
Me too. It's funny. So for our listeners, we have talked about doing the Narnia series on this podcast because Keri has read them, but I have never read them. I've only seen the movies, and the movies, there's only 3 movies, and there's 7 Narnia books. Now, I do have to say, the Narnia movies introduced Ben Barnes. So
I knew that was coming.
Are they that bad? I don't know, but
I mean, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is definitely good.
Yeah.
Prince Caspian was nothing like the book.
Oh, really?
So I had a hard time with that. But we had Ben Barnes, so it's easily ignored.
But anyways.
Voyage was terrible.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one too. Yeah. So anyways, all of that to say is if you think we should do the Chronicles of Narnia on this podcast. I think they're coming out with a TV show soon too. Listeners, let us know if you'd like to hear that.
Yeah, let us know. Also, back to Rebecca Ross. Since we went on our Narnia
Of
tangent
course,
and Ben Barnes tangent, of
as
course,
always.
because we do that every few episodes. She has written The Queen's Rising duology, a book called Dreams Lie Beneath. She has written Sisters of Sword and Song and the Elements of Cadence duology. So she's super into duologies, which I found interesting. I like it.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love a good duology. Yeah, so I was originally drawn to this book because I saw it on Book Talk, and I had just finished a book that gave me the worst book hangover I have ever had.
And what book was that, Becca?
Fourth Wing.
I knew that. I just had to make you say it on air.
And anyways, so I had just finished that and needed something to cure that book hangover. And I'm not going to lie here, this book did not cure my book hangover. However, I want to make it very clear that this is not because of the book itself. I was
Mm.
lied to about this book. So my expectations were very different going into this book than they should have been. I was searching for something so specific, and this book just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Because of that time in my life and when I first read this book, I probably would have given it like a 3 stars overall. Again, this is not because of the book,
Dang.
but because of the expectations of the book was Book Talk lied to me, and I will never forgive them.
Nah. Calling out book talk.
Ugh, man, I was upset.
Wow.
Now,
Dang.
with all of that said, I have been rereading Divine Rivals in preparation for this podcast and have loved it so much on a reread. And I'll let Keri go into this a little bit too, but I just feel like this is the coziest historical fantasy with heartbreakingly real characters. And I've so enjoyed this book on a reread that I cannot wait to experience Ruthless Vows too. I would also like to say that I liked this book enough to recommend it to Keri on the first read. So I did still really enjoy it. It just, like I said, it just wasn't what my expectations were because I was lied to. So, anyways, I'm so excited to be going because it's honestly like such a cozy read and I love it so much. But Keri, what did you think when you first read it?
So yeah, like Becca said, she recommended it to me, so that's how I was introduced to it. And I really enjoyed this book. It felt like a fantasy slash World War I or two like type of vibes. So I really liked it. It was like historical fiction fantasy, kind of very similar to Narnia. So it makes sense that Rebecca Ross was like a Narnia fan because that gave me the same vibes when I was reading it.
Yeah.
So love that. I really liked all the characters. I like the tea that they talk about. Like they always have a glass of tea. Typewriters are such an aesthetic, so I love that. Everything about this book I just loved. I have read it. This is my fourth time going through it.
Your
So
fourth?
whether I've read it or yeah, I've listened to the audiobook
Mm,
once, twice. This is my twice audiobook, once on my Kindle.
okay. It's beautiful. Okay, so can we please just talk about hold your book up again, Keri. Can we please just talk
Oh,
about the beautiful cover design of this book? It is so beautiful. Even okay, open even like inside the duster, what is it called? The dust the
I don't know. I call it a book cover thingy.
the book cover thing. Even like
Yeah.
the actual book itself, like not just like the dust wrap. We're gonna call it either the book cover thingy or the dust wrap. Like the inside of the book is so beautiful. I just
Dear Iris, typewriter.
gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous.
Great job. It's so beautiful, so mystical,
Yeah.
so like very like the D and the R look like typewriter buttons,
Oh, I didn't
keys.
even catch that.
Yeah,
So smart. With like the
so smart.
flowers.
Uh,
Beautiful.
everything. 10 out of 10.
Beautiful.
Such a great. When you were showing, Becca was showing me her copy that she just got on Amazon. So obviously I went and bought one as well because it was on sale. It's only $11 right now as of March 25th, 2024.
Yeah.
Or at least March 23rd because that's when I bought it.
I also still want to highlight though, like this book cover thingy, like the how it feels in your hand is so satisfying. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not the shiny like slippery, but it's also not like the sticky ones. Like there are some book covers that are sticky and they like give me like the heebie jeebies. Like this is like the perfect mix of like not too sticky but not too smooth
Mm-hmm.
too, and it stays on the book while you're reading through it, which I think is so important, and it just feels so satisfying when it's in your hands.
So true. I just opened it yesterday, so it's like
Ah,
I've been touching it all morning
beautiful.
in a non-weird way. It's just my book. I love when I love a book so much that I get it in every form
Ah, me too.
because I
Me
literally
too.
bought it on Audible.
Ah, amazing.
Yeah. So we got Kindle Unlimited, we
Beautiful.
got Audible, we got the hard copy. That's how much we
Beautiful.
love this book, y'all.
Yes.
Or at least I do. But the tagline, which is on the very front of the book,
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful cover. Are we ready?
We're ready.
No God, no creature, no war can come between them.
Ooh,
Yes.
so good.
So good.
So, okay.
So,
So that's a really good point. Is so we have no God, no war, no creature. So that gives us, even at the beginning, we know that there's them, right? So it is like a romance. We know
mhm.
there's no God. So there are gods in this book. I maybe they're similar to Luke, maybe they're not. Who knows?
Whew. Call back to Luke. I haven't thought about him in a while.
I know, right? So we do have gods in this book, we do have war in this book, and we do have creatures in this book. So three
Mhm.
very important things, and we have a couple because it's a romance, because nothing can come between them. So very important things.
Imagine if the plot twist is like it's like a family novel and we were lying to them,
A
the
family novel?
listeners. Nothing can come between the family.
Oh. No, it's a YA romance fantasy.
Oh, 100%. And we can prove it to you by reading the back of the book / inside cover book overview. You know,
Okay.
the like the summary that's normally in the back, but sometimes it's in the book cover thingy.
Okay.
We're gonna
Keri,
stick
this
it
is
to
an
you.
important question for you,
Oh,
because this is up for debate on some
okay.
things that I've seen in the book talk bookstagram world. Okay.
I'm intrigued.
So do you remember like a while ago, book covers would have had the summaries on the back of the book,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're reviews, but the summary is on the front, like the inside page, the front little
Mm-hmm.
flap. So do you like having the reviews on the back, or would you prefer to have a summary on the back?
No, definitely summary for sure.
100%. Why are we putting
I
reviews
don't.
on the back? Nobody cares about reviews. I mean, I'm
I
sure the author
literally don't know
does.
who anyone is. Like, I don't know what their preference is. I don't know who they are.
And they're not going to make me read the book.
No,
I'm not
I would trust Book Talk over them.
100%.
Like, put at whoever Book Talker.
Yes, petition to put some book talkers
Book
on.
Talkers on there.
I love
I
that.
love it. That would be great.
It would be.
So you prefer summaries too
Oh,
on the back.
100%. The reviews are
Like
never going to
if I
make me want to read the book.
and like I don't want to open the book, especially like I don't want to open it to read the summary.
Right.
Like I will open it to read it, not the summary.
Exactly. Exactly.
But speaking of, let's go ahead and read it and
Yes.
convince these listeners to read Divine Rivals.
Yes.
When two young rival journalists find love through a magical connection, they must face the depths of hell in a war between gods to seal their fate forever.
Ooh.
Here we go. After centuries of sleep, the gods are warring again. But 18-year-old Iris Winnow just wants to hold her family together. Her mother is suffering from addiction, and her brother is missing from the front lines. Her best bet is to win the columnist promotion at the Oath Gazette. To combat her worries, Iris writes letters to her brother and slips them beneath her wardrobe door, where they vanish into the hands of Roman Kit. I almost said Roman C. Kit, because that's how it is in audiobook all the time. Her cold and handsome rival at the paper.
Oh.
When he anonymously writes Iris back, the two of them forge a connection that will follow Iris all the way to the front lines of battle for her brother, the fate of mankind, and love. Divine Rivals is an epic enemies to lovers fantasy novel filled with hope and heartbreak and the unparalleled power of love. And if that won't convince you,
I don't
well,
know what
listen to the
will.
rest of this podcast episode because we'll make sure you are convinced by the end of this.
Exactly. Now, okay, so this is really interesting because I read this while I was prepping for this episode, and I have a bone to pick with the summary because,
Oh.
as I said earlier, Carrie and I have both read this book before, and I don't think this is an enemies to lovers. I think this is a rivals to lovers. And
I agree.
we've talked about this before, I think, on the podcast about how enemies to lovers needs to be more life or death. So I'm thinking like we haven't really done a good one on this podcast, and I don't want to talk about Fourth Wing again. I'm thinking of like the four Triss relationship in Divergent because they really are like in a life or death situation and they really are like enemies. And I know like we've talked about Pride and Prejudice. I would say that's an enemies to lovers too because they I
I
don't
mean, it's not life or death, but it like they I would argue that Darcy's convincing Bingley to spoiler alert for
Mhm.
Pride and Prejudice. If you haven't read it or watched the movies, I don't know what to say to you. So you need to go. But like how he got rid of Bingley for Jane is a life or death situation for their family at that time.
Yeah.
So because that would literally make sure they're all taken care of.
Yeah.
So I would argue in a less like fantasy way.
Right. Right. But I don't feel like this is an enemies to lovers because and well,
They liked each other immediately. Let's be real.
yeah, we'll dig into this more into episode 1, but yeah, I think this is definitely more of a rivals to lovers situation, and we can talk about that when we do our tour de toe at the end of the book. Okay, so we are splitting up the books, or this book specifically. We haven't talked about Divine Rivals yet. We probably should do that. But, or, I mean, we haven't talked about Ruthless Vows yet. We should probably do that. But
Yeah,
how we're
it's fine.
splitting up Divine Rivals for the rest of this podcast, this deep dive, is going to be in the 3 parts that the book is already split into. So we already have parts 1, 2, and 3. Parts 1 is going to be chapters 1 through 14. Part 2 is going to be chapters 15 through 28, and part 3 is going to be chapters 29 through 42. Now, I did go back and reread part 1 for the next episode already, and it took me about 2.5 hours to read. So yes, there are a lot of chapters, but it's not a super long parts. So I definitely think like it's not like we're signing you guys up for like 10 hours of reading each week. No,
No,
it'll be
they're
like
quick.
3 to 4 hours, maybe.
Yes. And we will talk about the prologue in part 1, and we'll talk about the epilogue in part 3. We'll kind of, because it's super short.
Yep, exactly.
I didn't talk to you about that beforehand, but
No, that's okay.
there we go.
Beautiful.
We also will need to talk about this. I just was looking at her dedication.
What do you want to talk about the dedication?
She said, P.S. I'm talking about chapter 34, who convinced me to add Roman's POV and who occasionally lets me get away with things.
Oh, Isabel?
Yes. So we need to. I want to. When we get to chapter 34, we're definitely going to need to remember that.
Yes, we will, for sure.
'Cause
Yeah, I think
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that either, but I think that's such a sweet. So I don't know, Carrie, if you know this, but Isabel, the girl who is in that dedication, she's also an author. And Rebecca
Ooh.
Ross and her are like really good friends right now. I don't know the history of their friendship, but they were really close. They're
Mm.
obviously, I mean, Rebecca dedicated this book to her, but Isabel is also an author and wrote a book and dedicated one of her books to Rebecca Ross. And I just think that's the sweetest
Oh,
thing.
I want to read that one now.
I know. It's Isabel. I forgot what her last name is.
Um, I'm gonna probably say this right, but it's like
Oh,
Ibanez.
Ibanez, I think.
Yes, I didn't take like any languages in school, so
Yeah, we're
I really want to fast forward and read chapter 34.
well, don't do it now.
I'm okay.
But anyways, so yeah, so I just thought that was a cute little like
That's a great.
fun fact.
I love it.
But thank you so much for listening to us today. If you liked today's episode, please rate and review us wherever you listen and give us a 5-star review. Also, the
High
best thing
fives.
you can do for us or another podcast you listen to is share us with your friends. If you've been trying to get your friends to read Divine Rivals, this is the perfect opportunity for
Mhm.
y'all to read through it together.
But for more content, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Tomes and Tropes Pod. Or if you have thoughts about this episode or this book, email us at tomesandtropespod@gmail.com or just shoot us a DM. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Divine Rivals if you've read it yet, but no Ruthless Vows spoilers, or I will come at you because we haven't read Ruthless Vows yet, and I don't want to know. I've done so good in not seeing any spoilers on TikTok and Instagram, so
Me too. I was thinking about that the other day too.
I'll don't ruin it for us. If you have thoughts about Ruthless Vows and you don't want to forget to tell us, just like send us an email that says spoilers for Ruthless Vows or something,
Yeah, make
and
sure
we'll
you
read
put
it
it
later.
in the subject line.
Subject line. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Because we'd love to hear your thoughts, just not yet.
Exactly. Anyways, we'll see you next time. Stay curious
Keep reading
and
and
craft
craft
your
your
own
own
story.
story.